and welcome to the first of many sketchbook tours. I have been drawing for a long time, and with that comes filling in many sketchbooks. I have a tub full of them, and one of the things I've wanted to do for a while is essentially go through a bunch of the ones that I think people might be interested in seeing. I have like 6 from over university alone, and a bunch of ones from high school even, which could be interesting to look at as a retrospective in my art. The sketchbook here, this one is from 2019 to 2021, over a period of roughly 2 years, and I designated this particular sketchbook as my painting sketchbook. So at the time I had a bunch of smaller A5 sketchbooks like this with significantly worse paper that I used as everyday sketching, and then if I wanted to practice watercolor or gouache, I'd use this sketchbook. On this first page, this painting was actually done... I visited my dad in 2019 up north in like Queensland and bought a bunch of gouache and this sketchbook, and I decided to paint a reference picture of the beach I found on the internet. I actually didn't have my normal brushes with me because I'd left them up there, which was mildly stressful, but I actually really like how this turned out, and I would like to do more gouache stuff. I always say that, but never do. These are just some watercolor experiments. This, I believe, was leftover paint from doing this one, and this is just an experiment with water and light and covering the whole page. I'm surprised this page doesn't have more along the edge. This is another kind of experimental one. This is Watercolor and Pencil. I did this as like a monochrome yellow because I liked the color yellow and thought, you know, pleasant and happy. Then I showed it to my mum, and at the time we had some bushfires happening that were not very good. And she was just like, oh, it reminds me of bushfires. And I'm like, oh, that is not the mood I was going for. But I can see what she means. This, I think, was once again leftover paint. I think I split it using tape or something and tried to make things look different. An experiment, but that's what a sketchbook's for. This is Ballpoint Pen and Watercolor, and I actually think Ballpoint Pen works pretty well as a sketching to do with watercolor, particularly if it's not like a final piece, although I've used ballpoint in final pieces before. And this is just acrylic. I don't like acrylic. I brought acrylics on a whim and was like, oh, I'll paint with them. They can be I forgot how much I didn't like them. I do like the color and how flat they lay down, but I am not an acrylic person. I like my watery activatable paints. Again, watercolor. You'll find most of these are watercolor. This, I think, was based off some like Japanese garden bridges with the typical curve, and then just a bunch of patterns. I think this is meant to be trees, and that's meant to be kind of a sky with some sort of building in front of it. I got a dot card sheet from, I believe it was Daniel Smith, when I went shopping with my grandfather for my birthday at an art store, and this one, I don't know if it'll show up, but it actually has pearlescent watercolors on it, and I used that dot card as the main source of paint for it, which is why it's so small. This is ink. The black's ink. I do like the overall mood of that piece. Maybe I could expand upon it. Yes, and here we have a vain attempt to start dating things. So this is in 2020. Before... Man, 2020 feels so long ago. I mean, it is 2022. That's literally 2 years ago. This was following a tutorial online by Coloured Sloops, who's on YouTube. I'll put a link to that in the description, since it was quite fun. And I really like how these turned out. I liked this one, I think, the most. As you can see, I've expanded on it in this piece here, just done the day afterwards. But yes, fun things to experiment with. This was another experiment looking at, I think it was rainbow eucalyptus trees, and then I didn't feel like colouring it all in, so I apparently cut out a pentagon and then used that for colour. This is a character of mine, some moth-based dude, mainly painted so that I could experiment with the blues and the purples. Once again, more acrylic stuff. So I brought some acrylic medium, the stuff that makes things thick, because I thought, hey, maybe if I add texture to the paintings, I might like acrylic. It kind of worked. I like the texture. I like working with the texture. I don't see myself doing a lot of things like that, just because, again, it's acrylic. I don't like how fast it dries, which for a lot of people is one of the draws of acrylic, but I liked, despite not liking blending, I don't like things drying fast. This is a study from an artist who goes by @sea on Tumblr. I'll put a link to the actual piece and their social media in the description. One of my biggest colour inspirations. I like the gradient here. I think I used more purple than is in the actual piece, but yeah. I like how it turned out, but again, this is not my original work. This is a study to look at colour. Here we have more studies from various things. This is from Henry Wong on ArtStation. These three are from Stand Still, Stay Silent, a webcomic which, if you do decide to read, I recommend ending at Adventure 1. Adventure 2 has a decent beginning and then things go downhill. That is all I'm going to say on that. The art for Adventure 1 is really gorgeous though. And then, as is typical for our artists, Studio Ghibli studies. I don't remember which particular films. I believe that is Howl's Moving Castle. But yeah, I really like the clouds, like a lot of people, so. Here we have a drawing of an older OC of mine circuit with experimenting with colours. There's not really much to say about that one. These are just also some more experiments. That's reference from a picture of flower water lilies. I think these are storm clouds or something like that I was referencing. And I don't know what this is, but it looks cool, and this is probably my favourite one. And I kind of wish it was done bigger, although I don't know how I would be able to get the actual kind of, maybe bring it closer to the camera. I don't know how I would be able to actually get the kind of textures and stuff that big. I am not a master of things. I went for a walk and I found someone growing these flowers, which I looked up to find out what they look like and what they were called, and they're apparently called the Star of Yalta. So I did some studies based on this flower in this little glass vase that I have, and I actually really like how the purple and pink ballpoint pen played into the colours. I don't know how to describe the quality, but it looks nice. These are studies. I follow someone on Instagram who does a bunch of gouache landscapes, and I think it's Justin Donaldson Art, and he did a free 12-week landscape thing at the start of the pandemic, and I decided to join in on that while doing classes, which was a busy period, but I do not regret doing it. So these are some like tonal gouache studies of various paintings. I don't remember each particular one. The biggest focus was how were the values grouped. And then I did it again in watercolor for a different one where it was talking about gradients and how that affected like the landscapes. I have a finished landscape I did somewhere. But yeah, so it's just essentially talking about how when placing down colors, they're not flat, they're gradients, which is very helpful for realism. And I even incorporate it in some of my digital flat looking pieces. Yeah, and then this is leftover paint from when I painted a landscape. Let me grab it. So This is the final little gouache painting that I did after doing that landscape course. The original reference photo didn't have this in it. I added it because I was playing a lot of Breath of the Wild and liked star fragments, so I thought it could be neat to have just a little star fragmenty kind of thing. But yes. Yeah, that's the original flat tonal look at the reference photo I used. That's just, I think, me wiping off paint and stuff like that. Same here. This is me experimenting with how can I make it more interesting, which, if I put this piece here, you can see how I've kind of tried to apply the more tonal things. I should do more gouache studies. This is actually really fun to do. I wanted to design a character based off a pineapple. I don't think I spent too long on it. I also wanted to practice mixing some darker skin tones. I do find the dress kind of fun. Not really much to say about her because I think this was only done in like an hour. Didn't have a lot of time spent. Some more study things. I think this was a tutorial, but I can't remember who did it. This one, I'm not quite sure what inspired it or why I drew a girl in front, but I'm actually really happy with like the see-throughness. Makes it kind of look like a ghost. This was done after a bunch of stressful uni stuff. I just wanted to get down colour, and so I just kind of kept layering over and over. And then as I was doing these brush strokes, I'm like, they kind of look like birds. So we have some fancy looking birds in front of all this colour, which I really like. As I've mentioned, this was done over uni. One of the things, this page is some concept art for my student film that I worked on with a group from university, where essentially it was a short film set to music about a dude escaping a cult, and so we wanted them to have like an eldritch kind of monster thing, except the monster wasn't the real like bad guys of the short. The monster all just wanted to go home. So it was either going to be set by an ocean town, which we ended up doing, or a forest. So I had some kind of experiments, like this guy and this guy, and then again more loose ink sort of ones. I still like this design a lot. I do like weird deer creatures. I've drawn a few recently. I bought some fancy new watercolors and decided to experiment using them. I overworked this piece. It's a bit muddy, but I do like the fire. I don't know if it'll show up if I do this, but it's got some shimmers in there. And I think the fire and the bricks look nice. This, I think, was just me going for it and doing whatever. Experimenting, I think, with adding in pinks and purples. Not much to say about this guy, other than his hair's really fluffy. Here we have some, not so much studies. This is a study of a photo of a statue. The statue actually has a head, I just didn't want to draw it. I think I mixed 3 colours and then decided to paint using only those 3 colours to see what I could do. I really like how this spread is like really cohesive. It's fun to look at, even if like not many of them have a purpose. These trees are fun. I should do more stuff like that. This is, I don't think it's a study. It's half a study. So in my paints, I have Daniel Smith's Aussie Red Gold, which is a really nice, well, it's this color, and I'm pretty sure it was made because in Australia we have a lot of red earth, but it's kind of like a more orangey red. It's hard to explain, but this is quite accurate to it, so I'm pretty sure it was made to help people wanting to capture that. And these are wattle flowers. I put bronze sort of shimmery stuff in the center of them. I just wanted to, I think, experiment with layering and depth, which led to this. This I still really like. As I mentioned here, this has shimmer in it. I think this is when I bought a bunch of shimmers. And so I just kind of went at it and drew this little girl kind of sketch. lots of greens and blues. This green separates. I do like granulating watercolors with the separations. I think they're really nice. This is based off a picture I saw in a video where there's just this rain going over the top. And I just really like the way the window was segmented. So I expanded it and then I drew, that's Melbourne in the background. It's a really light sketch of Melbourne. So it's just wrote some fancy building across the ocean, because that is not anyway what it would look like if you're just looking at Melbourne across the Yarra. Here we have a picture of Karin from Fire Emblem. I bought a gouache called Opera Pink, which you can see here, which is a neon pink. It's very good for mixing. It's not light fast, so I don't think I would use it particularly outside of mixing. And even so, I would want to do light fast tests with its mix if I wanted to ever sell anything really using it, unless it was a print. And then these were done with the leftover water on the palette, and I really like this, the looseness of like the flowers. I think this was done to test how I would go about painting a more stylized figure, because I don't paint stylized. I don't paint enough. This was, I wanted to paint a larger landscape. I hadn't done so in a while, and I was like, you know, it could be fun. That. So we have some clouds that I wanted to make look really fluffy and round, like voluminous, not necessarily realistic at all. And then some ruins. I actually painted, you can see peeking through like bits of yellow. That's because I did kind of an underpainting in watercolor where I used orange and yellow. Yellow to signify where I'd want all the highlights, and then orange for all the dark, as you can, little bits of yellow peek through. Which I really liked how the result of that came through. It meant that like the bits that didn't quite get colored in those areas have like the watercolor shining through, and I like how it looks. I think that's painting areas in a saturated color before going over them was a thing that was done quite a lot in older traditional painting. I should look that up. It's hard to explain what I mean. This I think is just a page. I wanted to sit down, I wanted to paint, I didn't know what to paint, so I just used color. That's an eye. Going back to high school. When in doubt, draw an eye. I do like the brush stroke quality here. That's fun. I bought some new colors. I think it was Payne's Grey. That might be Shadow Violet. That might be Shadow Violet. And I think Rose of Ultramarine was the other one. So I just did some experiments. This was done with like the Calero watercolors. I got some those, and I have silver. I like this page a lot, even though it's just splattered dots. Let me bring this closer to the camera so you can see some of the separation, like particularly here. I like that a lot, and let me just straighten that, and I should do more of it. This is just I was painting something and needed to wipe my brush on something. I bought Posca pens and drew this. This is based off a lotus, the underside of a lotus leaf, seed pod, the leaves. I really like this. I like using Poscas. I've been doing that a lot recently, even though this is like a year old. But yes, there's that one. Some quick sketches. I bought some handmade watercolors. I can't remember the name of the green, but that's Crimson Madder Lake. And that was me experimenting with them because I'd just gotten them. I did some experiment thing, which I hadn't drawn that, but you know what? Sketchbook, not that bad. But I do like this. This is based off a reference photo of some model sticking their head out of the water. I like the brush strokes I used. It was just like a Pentel brush pen thing. That's a character of mine, Sylvie. I used her in university for an animatic thing I did, and then I never actually uploaded it outside of university. That might be an idea, but no. So that's her. and this is one of my favorites. I started getting into reference pictures recently, so I have a bunch downloaded, and one of them included a bunch of like fake skulls taken with different lighting. So this is done obviously with blue and pink. So I focused on the skull and then just kind of added the ingot stuff in the background as kind of a whatever kind of thing. I like the gold. The gold that I added was a last kind of impulse, and I think it looks nice. I went to Disney's exhibition at the Australian Centre of Moving Image. There was a lot involved with Frozen, which as someone who wasn't a Frozen fan was kind of sad, but I wanted to know more about like the technical side of things, and this was definitely more geared to people who had no idea about animation. They did have the multiplane camera there, which is fun. For those who don't know, in older Disney films and older animated films in general, the multiplane camera was something, so you'd have the bottom, the top, and then it would have glass in between, and you'd put each bit of the background or whatever you want to move on the glass pane, and then slowly move it, so you get those panning effects, or when they zoom in, say like the moon doesn't move, but everything else moves closer to the camera. Brought, I think it was 2 Indigos, and comparing them to the blues I already own. Apparently I did not check for that, it's really what's French ultramarine. So both Winsor Newton and Daniel Smith's Indigo. I attempted realism here, it didn't work out, as you can tell by me sticking it there. The difference, there's like a gradient, but Winsor Newton is much more blue, much more cool. Daniel Smith has warm, and it kind of goes into an almost kind of violety purple. I like both of them, which is why I got both, because they both serve different purposes. I wanted to just paint, so I did some trees. This is my current watercolor palette. I have it in a tin sort of thing, and I don't have like a color sheet because it can hold 48 colors. I don't have 48 colors in there yet. When I do, I will actually cut out and stick a permanent sort of tin thing. So just making up some trees with the colors I have. And then I went over them with pencil. I really like these 2 trees. Wish my page would still be a little longer. Yeah, there's not really much to say. Just kind of experimenting. These were figure studies. We have a bunch. It's not very much, they're just figure studies, and I used a different color for each one because I thought it would be fun. I was right, it was fun. So obviously we have the rainbow, and I continued that on for the final one. I think the thing that spurred me to do it was the fact I had indigo, and so I could go, I can do the whole rainbow including indigo. So yeah, this is just kind of part of a set, which I think looks really nice. And I didn't use this pocket because I was like, I don't need to use the loose leaf. I have a secondary sketchbook. My current sketchbook is another one of these, except I've used the pocket. It's expanding. This one isn't separate. It's not a paint sketchbook. This one's just a sketchbook. I decided to upgrade after like 5 of the smaller ones I showed earlier. But yes, that is my sketchbook. Done. Complete. 2 years of exclusively painting. I hope you enjoyed